Hey team, and welcome. I'm your host, Carrie, creator of Mother Life, your destination for all things real talk and parenting. This is the IRL group chat, where we talk about the wild balancing act of pursuing careers and passions while also doing our best to show up for our kids. Join me every week as I sit down with some badass parents in my closet and we talk about their careers, kids, and relationships and all of the weird shit that comes up when you're trying to balance the seemingly impossible. Kids dream up what they might do for a job a few different ways. They observe what they see modeled in their own home, what they see out in the real world, from postal service workers to doctors, truck drivers to dog walkers, and what they see on the big and little screens and read in books: actors, singers, astronauts, dancers, professional athletes. Of course, there are so many more ways to make a living than fit into those buckets, but kids' worlds are small, and so they start with what they know. As they grow, so do the professional possibilities. Performing Annie in the living room doesn't mean your kid is destined to be a professional actor, but who knows, maybe it does. Being good at a sport doesn't mean that your kid's going to be a professional athlete. I don't know, maybe it does. Admiring a parent for their career choice doesn't mean that you'll do the same thing, but maybe it does. Today's guest has landed in a spot that really took so much about the essence of what she loved about her parents, their personalities and their values, and the things she loved in her own childhood, and applied it to a novel problem in adulthood. Parenthood, specifically. Because just as kids' worlds get bigger as they grow, so do parents' worlds. They also get bigger as they take on this crazy, unhinged job of parenting. Brittany Sheehan is a sleep guru. Her sleep consulting business, Brittany Sheehan Sleep, has helped thousands of parents navigating the tricky world of kids' sleep. And she's done it in a way that is so her. She's taken things she loved as a kid, connecting with people, using humor to build rapport and relationships, spending time with kids. She's married all of that with something that she discovered later in life that she was actually very good at and that she loved. I'm excited for you to hear this high-octane conversation. One thing before we dive in, a little trigger warning for listeners. Around the 40-minute mark, we do talk about some traumatic labor and delivery events. If this is something you're not in a place to hear right now for whatever reason, meet us on the other side around the 43-minute mark. Let's get into it. Enjoy. This is a fun one. Tell me what you had for breakfast.
I got these little mini croissants from Gelson's, and my kids really like them. So,
Gelson's. I have a very complicated relationship with that store because...
Me too.
The markup is absurd.
It's absurd.
And also, they have the best rotisserie chicken in town. So what am I supposed to do?
And their baguettes are really good too. So those are two things that
I haven't tried their baguettes, and I should, because I have a son who basically the only carb he will eat is a baguette.
Yes.
Not any other kind of bread, whatever. It's
just
baguette.
My oldest really likes baguettes too. But I literally had somebody had like a charcuterie at like a dinner party, and I was like, this baguette is amazing. And she was like, Gelson's.
But the problem is for me that I will go in there and I'll be like, cool, I'm gonna buy the baguette and the rotisserie.
But then
then I'm like, oh well, I need like 4 other things, and then the bill is $100, and I have 4 things in my bag.
Like all I got was strawberries.
I blacked out and I spent $100 on strawberries.
And then I do Instacart, which is even worse because then they have the like, do you want this too? And I was like, I do.
I want
that.
I Instacart Costco, which I
do too.
think defeats the purpose of like the bargains that we're supposed to be getting at Costco, but I'm kind of there for the bulk rather than the bargain.
But it's good I do that for snacks. So this is really, really bad, but this is like, one of my friends has this like phrase she uses called chaos tax, which is like you have to budget for whoops, forgot to pay our property taxes, the first one.
Yeah, of course.
Like, 10%. Then I get like a $900. I'm like, oh my God. Like, just because I'm stupid, like there was no reason, I just forgot.
You know what? This makes me feel better because like having looked into your history, career, professional history, and seeing how you conduct your business now, if you're paying chaos tax, then like what hope do we
Everyone's
have?
paying chaos tax. Yeah.
That makes me feel better, actually.
Yeah.
I just spent, it took me a month and a half, my son starting TK, to do the forms, like to get all the forms in, because there's 5,000 fucking forms.
Yes.
And I was just like, what is wrong with me that I can't do the forms?
Did you realize you don't have a birth certificate for your children? Because that's what happens when I tried to do Baker's forms this year for kindergarten.
Okay, so were all of your kids born in California?
Teddy was born in New York, and that one they automatically sent
Correct.
it to you.
Okay, up top.
So I just forgot. I was, because in New York it wasn't like I went anywhere; it just came.
My daughter, we didn't get her birth certificate till about her first birthday because once we realized that they don't just send it, then it took forever for it to actually come.
Yes. I had to do a rush. I paid some sort of rush service, but this is a classic case of like, it was actually
Chaos
way
tax.
less hard. It was this one. Yeah, exactly. But it was actually way less hard than I thought. This is like when I had an expired, see, I'm really making myself so great here. I had my New York license expire. I didn't realize it. And then I was like, oh my God, I can't go to the DMV. I just can't. And I kept putting it off. And I was literally driving around with an expired license for like 6 months. And then I finally made the appointment. And I go, and I was in there. I'm not exaggerating. I was in there for 10 minutes.
Right, of
And
course.
I was like, okay, see,
The classic
gotten, like
thing-
arrested, and like you could have just done it 6 months ago.
But like the classic thing of the thing that takes 10 minutes actually takes 2 years to achieve
Correct.
because in our minds we make it such a big deal.
because I thought about it every day for 6 months.
Yeah.
And like made myself feel bad and just was like,
Yeah.
I'll do it another day.
Yeah, I am the opposite, however, where I would have been like, I couldn't possibly be breaking a rule. So I have to drop everything and move heaven and earth to get this dealt with immediately.
Yeah, well, I have that too, which is the problem. So it's like the juxtaposition.
The anxiety of knowing that you're not following
Yes.
the rule.
Correct. That like you're going to get sent to the principal's office.
Yeah, okay.
My worst nightmare.
So we're more similar than I thought. Brittany,
Great. What?
welcome to the closet.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
So I have been enjoying your stories so much because you're very funny. And
As are you.
Oh, thank you so much. Two funny gals hanging out in a closet.
Yeah.
But so you're very funny. I'm enjoying these stories. And then I went to your website, and your website is very much like a funny girl's take on sleep in a way where you're just like, I sleep, like you could be sleeping.
Yeah.
Or, you know, it's
Yeah.
it's very punchy. Whereas I don't know. I feel fine saying what I'm going to say. You don't have to weigh in if you don't, because it's somebody else in the sleep space.
Yes.
But like taking care of babies. Yeah. But it's very much feels like a wholesome thing that's trying to be sold to you. Like healthy
Yes.
sleep is for like wholesome, good American family. Like it's just a POV that did not resonate with me. Yet at the time when I had my first, I was like, I guess you're what everybody goes to for sleep.
Yeah.
And then I found out how unaligned she and I are on some views. And I was just like, okay, I now feel good about not liking you. Because for a long time, I was just like secretly not liking you because everyone said that you're the person I should be getting advice from. And then when you know, she more publicly shared some of her true colors, I was like, no, now I feel good about this.
Yeah. Totally.
So I think you know what we do here. We're going to start with little Brittany.
Okay.
What I love about the career trajectory that we're about to talk about and the personal trajectory, I think, is that becoming a parent actually fundamentally changed the course of your professional life. Yeah?
Yes. Correct.
But you also did some very cool stuff before that when I was going through like your past life, I was just like, oh my God, remember Birchbox? Is that
Yes.
still a thing?
No, not really.
But it was at the time a revolutionary thing.
I was there when it was like the thing. It was a really cool place to be when I was there. Yeah.
I can imagine, because I was looking, I was like, oh my God, like there are so many sort of signposts of interesting times to be in interesting places, and you
Yes.
kind of were in them at those
Totally.
times.
Yeah.
But let's start with little Brittany. So
Okay.
you were born in New York?
Yes, I was born in New York. My dad got transferred to Chicago.
What kind of job was transferring him?
He was in finance. What's that? What's the song? Like 5'5"?
Oh,
I want a man with 6'5" blue eyes.
looking for a man in finance. 6'5", blue eyes.
It's like so broad, but he was in like on the sales
Money
side,
things.
sell side. Yes, he was doing money things.
Money things.
I did like I remember when I was really young. There was some sort of like career day or whatever, and I was like, my dad carries a briefcase and he points at pie charts. And he goes on the plane to Buffalo. He used to say like he was going to Buffalo a lot, and I would be like, he's going to Buffalo.
Right. You're like this mysterious place.
Where is Buffalo? But yes, and then we moved to Chicago. But I sort of like a mix of New Yorker and Chicago, because Chicago is where I was like had my formidable years.
Yeah.
Middle school, high school.
So a mix of a New York person and a Chicago person is interesting, right? Because they're different kinds of friendly, I feel.
Yes.
So I don't know what happens when you mix them together, but we're going to find out.
And then I went to college in the South, so I'm very I'm just a global woman.
What part of the South?
North Carolina.
Okay.
North Carolina.
North Carolina. Those are basically different countries.
No, it was like very eye opening. Like, hey, sugar. I was like, whoa, this lady's really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that's interesting. All three of those places have their own brand of niceness.
Correct.
As does LA.
Totally.
Has a different brand of niceness. And it's like under different layers, the real truth lies.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So you born in New York, moved to Chicago. Mm-hmm. Is your mom working?
My mom is. So my dad, actually, this is like a weird pivot for her job, but she was not working when I was a kid. She was working like until I was born. When my dad passed away, and she had gone back, I think when my sister and I were like end of high school, she was starting to be like, because she was like the super stay-at-home mom, like room mom, crafts, like field trips, like
crafts,
like sewing me like clothes when I was like 6, like all that stuff, baking cakes. And once we like were not in need of those things anymore, she went back to school for social work, which she was just interested in. And after my dad passed away, when I was 22.
Rough.
After like a brief, like really awful 2 years, he had a rare form of MS that was progressive. And I think her experience in hospice and like seeing that sort of thing, she was like, I want to, which I think was a great idea. Like she was like, I want to be that person, a social worker for hospice patients, because I've also lived through it. And once you've gone through like a huge loss like that, you act differently around people when they're in a similar situation because how to help them, basically. So that's what she does now. And she's been both in private practice at times and like affiliated with hospitals in Chicago. And she's still there in Chicago.
What a badass thing to do. In the sense of there's two ways to respond to extreme trauma. Because she was young. Sure. She had, in her mind, loads of years ahead of her with her husband.
Exactly. Yeah, she was in her 40s. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's not far from where we are now. And you could say, like, I want to just forget that this ever happened to me and figure out how to move on with my life.
Right.
To sit with other people in that is a hard thing to do.
Totally.
So,
a classic example of everyone handling grief differently.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like you just can't like judge it because you have no idea.
No idea. And how nonlinear it is.
Totally.
22 is a rough time to lose a parent. Were you guys close?
We were super close. We were like very like super tight. And I look more like my mom, but everyone's like, that's the best compliment anyone could give me is someone who knew my dad. Like I had my great uncle pulled me aside and is like, it's like when you're at the dinner table, it's like talking to Dennis. And I was like, that is the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love that. So you guys were very close. Your mom's at home. She goes back, starts a career sort of when you guys are still young, but
right.
In a different chapter of needing her.
Yes.
Out of the house. You have how many siblings?
I have one sister who's 18 months younger, so we're very close in age.
Wow. Okay. So also for her, you guys are leaving the house kind of around the same time. There's no like gentle off ramp for mom. Like you guys are in the house and then you are very much out of the house.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. And then growing up, what is it like for you? Do you have strict parents, lenient parents?
Yes, very strict parents. Not strict in like a mean way. No one was beating us, but very much like on the spectrum. I felt, what's fascinating is I felt like when I was young, super strict. Like to the degree that my mom has like apologized and been like, I didn't give you any leeway to like, like I was really, really like hard on you guys. Like you have to, da-da-da-da-da. But like when I was a kid, I had a happy childhood. It wasn't like I was sad or anything, but it felt like I had more rules than most of my friends. But then interestingly, when I was like in high school, and I'm not sure if this was like, if there were other factors at play as to why this shift happened, but I felt like I had way less rules than other friends, but because of sort of like the morals and boundaries and like structure they put in when I was little, I wasn't like friends with anyone who was like out like ripping wheelies and like drunk driving. And like my friends were like, we were like drinking beer in someone's basement, but we were pretty like chill. So they all had curfew. So like, what was I going to do? Go out by myself and like roam the streets, So it was kind of nice.
So it's kind of like a genius accident
or
otherwise. Accident or otherwise. So give me an example of like strictness. Because obviously you're too young for curfews if it's your younger years. Is like what was dinner time like at the table?
So that's the one of like all the things that I'm like, when you become a parent, you have these moments of like, what am I going to take from my childhood that I loved and I want my kids to experience, and what would I never do? And one of them was like the food stuff, because it was like you have to eat everything on your plate. And I don't have a huge appetite just in general. I never have.
Yeah.
So sometimes I genuinely wasn't hungry. And my mom, love her to death. Love her. Do not love her cooking. So, and like she will
Sorry,
admit
Mom.
that.
Sorry, Mom.
She doesn't believe in seasoning.
Sure.
She doesn't believe in following, like if it says keep it in the oven for 40 minutes. She's like, vibes 25. Like
Undercooked chicken.
like, Mom, it's not like about her being a bad cook. I'm like, follow the recipe. Like even now I'll be like, Mom, it says take the butter off. And she's like, it's fine. I'm like, it's burning. So it wouldn't be very good. So it was like, I wasn't that hungry and it tasted really bad.
Sure.
So I do have like memories of like, sitting there with like the cold plate and,
just like staring it down.
Staring
being
at
like, I'll take this to my death, but I'm not eating the raw chicken.
Exactly.
So you liked having dinner as a family, but didn't like the food being served.
Yes, we definitely had, like, we were close. One thing my parents, I think, did really well is kind of instilling we're a team. This is how our family does stuff. And like sometimes those were things I didn't like, but in general, it felt like, oh, there's a reason why these are our rules, and like this is how our family is, and every family's different, and that's okay. That kind of stuff.
Religious?
Super. That was the other thing. So they were super like conservative. Both of my parents were raised Catholic, and then kind of veered more into Christian for a period, and they were very, very focused on that. We went to church every Sunday. I was in like a kid's Bible study thing on Wednesday nights, and I'm certainly not religious, but there were definitely some sides of that I didn't love a lot. Like the message that like and I do think this, like now I'm really pivoting, I do think it genuinely impacted how I interacted with boys in high school and college in not a good way, because I was literally being told when I was like 10 or 11 that like any man who like glances your direction is just like trying to deflower you. It's like, oh, be scared. Whereas if that was not the case, because it's not the case, like, boys can be your friends.
Yeah.
So when I kind of realized that early in college, I was like, oh, these are all guys who are just normal, nice people, and they're my friends, and no one's trying to attack me.
Yeah.
You need to be safe, but like that's not like what's happening, right?
Yes.
Like you're allowed to like talk to a boy. So that was like one big thing that I was like still gives me the ick about that side of like
Well, you know
religion.
what's so interesting? So I grew up Jewish. I am Jewish, but I didn't have any of that piece in my sort of religious upbringing. However, there was something about how I was brought up. I think this is, again, I grew up in the South in Florida, about like constantly being scared of, and maybe I actually think it's partially a generational thing. Like we were constantly told that like we were going to be teen pregnant moms and like contract all sorts of STIs.
Correct.
And that's outside of the religious framework made me really scared of anything sort of sexual.
Correct.
Really, really scared of it. In a way that I like say now, like I wish somebody had just been like, this is what female pleasure is, and this is how to think about it, and this is how to talk to a partner about what you want. Of course, I don't want to have that fucking conversation with my parents, but like somebody in the universe, because it took me so long to not be terrified. And sometimes still to this day, I'll be like, oh God. Like
totally.
Yeah.
It was like that with like the drugs too, right? It was like the dare thing. And
yes.
It was like I was convinced that like every alley there was just like someone was going to jump out and like try to force me to take cocaine.
Right.
But
or like there's like heroin needles available at any moment, and if I tripped and fell, I might become an addict.
You would get stabbed. Yeah. And you would become addicted. Yeah.
So a lot of messaging from our childhood maybe we don't bring forward. Maybe we do a little bit more like honest conversations.
Yes.
Disclosure.
Yes. Totally.
But the reason why I asked if it was religious is because I feel like sometimes the strict parent thing comes from that place, or like they reinforce each other.
Yes, totally. And that was like, I remember at one point I was a gymnast growing up, and I got invited to be on like a more senior like level team. And I had to like fight my parents to get onto it. And I look back at that and I'm like, why? Like if one of my kids, and I'm talking about like a 10 or 11-year-old, like someone who's old enough to be like, this is my passion. I've been doing it for a while. I really like it. But I had to like really fight them to like do it. Cause it was, practice like 4 or 5 days a week.
Yeah.
But they were like, we want you to be well-rounded. I'm like, I get it. But I've done swimming. I've done tennis. I've done figure skate. I've done all, and this is what I love. So like, let me at it, bro. Like, but what about your Wednesday night church camp? And I remember like sitting with my dad and being like, me missing that for like my favorite sport doesn't make me less Christian or less believing God. Like there are other ways, like I'm still going to church on Sunday. There's other like avenues here, like let's like look at this logically.
Yeah.
And I guess it landed because they did let me, but I look back and I'm like, why did that take so long for them to be like, you can do the sport that you love?
Do you think it's because they didn't want to drive you 4 or 5 days a week to your fucking practice?
Well, 100%. But then the like the takeaway of that, like my dad was at work, he wouldn't have been able to. But my mom, yes. So what she did is she actually hired, which was great. She hired this high school girl in our town to be my driver, like to take me to and from practice. And this girl, she was like in the band, and she was kind of like a theater girl. And I was just fascinated by her life because she would be like, I think this guy Andrew is going to ask me to prom. And I'd be like, what happens at prom? Like, what is that? When is he going to ask you? Like, is he in the play with you? And she's like, yeah, we're both the leads. And she would like give me all of her like tea. And as a 12-year-old or however, I was like, this is so cool. Oh yeah, I thought she was the coolest. Yeah.
That is huge. And also well done on your mom on figuring out how to delegate something she didn't want to do.
Totally.
Respect to that, Mom. Okay, so through this time, so gymnastics, that resonated with you. What sorts of things were you into as a kid where you were like, when did you start to have views of like, this might be the type of job I want to try one day? Because we were always asked as a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yes.
Which obviously we don't do now in the same way, but.
I know. You know what's fascinating is if I actually go all the way back, what I remember is I think it was second grade. That was the first time we did like a project about what you want to be. And I said I wanted to be a preschool teacher. And I loved babysitting. Like I had a babysitting empire on my street. I had like a standing Friday night. I had a standing like 4 days a week after school for an hour. And they paid me like $4 an hour, like something really awesome.
You were crushing.
I was fully the nanny for a newborn.
Isn't
like,
that so crazy when you think about that stuff now? It's like
crazy.
I cannot believe people just let me with no experience.
It is wild.
I'd be like, I did my CPR certification at like the local firehouse or whatever.
Correct. I had a bag.
Right.
It's called Safe Sitters. It was like a bag, canvas bag with the Safe Sitter logo, and I would like make the parents write, the emergency info, and like I had like a little chart and like crafts for kids.
All tracking for you.
Oh yeah, yep. So
love it.
But then, you get older and like it's funny now. Our favorite babysitter is like 11. I'm obsessed with her. And I think some of my friends are like, is she like a little young? And I'm like, no, because it's actually the like 17 and 18-year-olds who are like texting their boyfriend. They're never available because they're like out doing whatever. The 12-year-olds, they play with your kids. They're so conscientious. As long as they are like mature and can handle like a tougher situation.
Are they like putting your kids to bed at that age?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, amazing.
She's 12 and a half now. When she was 11, she was putting Delaney down when she was like a year old. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's because my kids are easy to put down. So that's.
We got a professional now. So
yeah, so.
What are we charging for this for a 12-year-old? What's the market rate these days?
I pay her $18 an hour. So when she started, her mom said give her 10.
Yeah.
Because she was like 10 years old. But at some point I realized I was no longer, because at first she was kind of mother's helper. Like she would come when we were home.
Right.
But my husband and I still had work to do, or like one of us was in and out, whatever. But now it's like I asked her if she can do Friday night, but I'm planning to be like out for dinner, And so I told her mom, like, I know you said that, but like I'm now using her in place of girls that I would be paying 18 or 20 an hour. So she deserves that too,
Epic.
Let her get her Sephora haul. That's what she uses it for. She like gets her drunk elephant, and like, which that's a whole other topic.
Everybody listen to the Sarah Tan episode from Refinery 29 if you want to hear more about young kids and the Sephora girls and drunk elephant. Yes, it's a whole help us all. Okay, so initially second grade, you're thinking preschool teacher sounds good. How does that evolve over your sort of education experience?
Yes. Well, I had the typical delusions. One was that I was going to be a famous singer for sure, or actress. I was going to be in the theater. I did a lot of that when I was a kid.
Like informed by your 16-year-old driver.
Maybe partially.
Really incepted you on how cool it is to be a theater kid?
Well, probably. But I also think, and I wonder if this is a good or a bad, it's probably a bad thing and something we should be conscious of as parents. But I'm sure every parent does this, but you sort of get in your head like this is who your kid is. Yeah. And I feel like I was inadvertently, not in a negative way, but fed. Like Brittany's the like really outgoing, like she has such a good voice. She's so theatrical. She's so like great at that. And my sister's like so artistic, so moody. Like she's so shy. And like we were very much like the sun and the rain cloud.
Yes.
Not in a way that they were disparaging to her, but it was like, oh, Juliana is just, we need to like get her into more art things. That's her thing. So I think that is who I naturally am. But I also, I was the one that would like go down to the dinner party and organize all the kids and be like, we're going to do Annie. I will, of course, be Annie. You will be the orphans. My sister will be Mrs. whatever her name is,
Hannigan.
Miss Hannigan. I was going to say Flanagan, something like that. So I think that was part of it, but I did really like it. That was like my thing. And then gymnastics. I was going to be an Olympic gymnast, obviously. But it was funny because in college, and I'm really close with my dad, and I very much just like wanted to be him. You know, before he was sick, we were just like very simpatico. And so I was like, finance.
I saw
I'm
you
gonna
did
be
an
a finance
internship.
guy. Multiple.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm terrible at math. It was not a good choice. And I think it was a blessing in disguise because I got out of college. I don't know what year you are. I was 08. So it was like...
08 as well.
Yeah. So, that was like the worst time to graduate.
Especially for a finance sort of gig, yeah.
Exactly. So he had...
For our younger listeners, there was a global financial crisis in the year 2008. And it's the reason why all of the millennials are the way they are in so many ways.
Correct. Because we had 9/11 in high school. Then we've been through some...
We had DARE.
We had DARE for starts.
Yeah. We had DARE telling us that we were all going to die of heroin overdose, then 9/11, then all global recession.
Super fun.
Yeah.
Chill. And because of that, so that was right when my dad passed, like that June. And his twin, not his twin, but his Irish twin, his brother, who I was also close with, he's also passed, unfortunately. But he was like, "You're coming back to New York. You're coming right now." They lived there. He was like, "You're gonna live with me. We're gonna like help you find a job." He was just like, because that had always been my plan. But when something like that happens, you're kind of just like frozen in time.
Yeah.
So I moved there with him, and I did a bunch of like interviews, but I couldn't find, like, nobody was hiring, and I was brand new. All I had was those internships.
Yeah.
And so my poor aunt, his wife, was like out in the Hamptons and like was chatting with someone at her son's like tennis class. And she was like, "Oh yeah, I own this like fashion house and we need unpaid interns for Fashion Week." And I was like, "Done. Just
like,
give me
I'm
something
great at
to
working
do
for free. I take $4 an hour, but if that's not on the table."
I didn't exactly have, yeah. So I did that internship, and like 2 or 3 days in, I was like, "Oh, I think I didn't realize like I could do something like this." I kind of figured you needed like an in, or I guess I did have an in, right? But, and I was like, I know this is an unpaid internship, but I'm going to make them hire me. So I was like, I'm just going to stay later than everybody else. I'll offer to do whatever they want. And the last day of the week, they were like, "Do you want to stay? And we'll pay you like $10 an hour to run our sample sale." And I was like, yes. Did that. And then, a few months later, they were like, I think I wore them down.
Yeah. And
I worked hard enough that they were like, "Okay, fine. You're just going to be like on the team now and do stuff." And that was my first job. Yeah.
So and you were in menswear, right?
I was at that point. I was at this company that is now defunct. It is not my fault personally. Just to be clear, called Luca Luca. So it was like high-end couture. That's where I started. Then at Theory, I was a mix. I was at Taskins Theory for a little bit, Helmut Lang, which is women's, and Theory men's. So when I was promoted within Theory, I moved to the men's team. So I did like both. Yeah.
I ask because my first ever internship when I got to college, I did some in high school, but when I got to college, my first ever internship was working at Fashion Week for a small menswear designer.
No way.
And for somebody who had
what a cool internship in college.
Yeah, very cool. Was very terrified of boys really up until this point. And then was just like watching them get naked behind stage, doing changes and stuff. And I was just like, I can get used to this. This is not bad.
This is not
bad.
I didn't get that. The point where I was like the minion enough that I was in the changing room, it was at Luca Luca. So there, and a little bit at Ralph Lauren, but they were women, sadly.
That would have been very interesting from an anthropological perspective for me. Because, like, when I go to the gym now and I see there's, like, models who train at my gym, I just look at them and I'm like, we're a different species.
Yeah.
Like, we're just built different.
Oh, yeah. And they're all that's the other fascinating thing about them is they're often very young, very naive. And, like, you look at them and you feel intimidated. When you're in the changing room with them, they're like, "Do you know if there's anywhere you can get olives around here?" And they're like, "None of the girls in my house have them." And I'm like, I can find out. Like, they're like 18.
Yeah.
And they're from like Slovakia and don't know anybody.
They want their olives.
And they want their olives, Yeah.
So funny. Okay, so then you spend some time in the fashion world and you become a buyer, right?
Yes. So I was in merchandising, right? So I was doing fabric buying at Theory. I really wanted to move into sales. So this is when I realized what I actually had in common with my dad was not like the finance piece. It was the forward-facing people piece. We're both people.
Yes.
So then I was like, I should be, and the fabric buying, I was more on, like, that was different from what I did at Luca Luca, but then you're more on the inside, right? It's more back end.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to move on to the sales team, but they basically, like, I was pigeonholed at Theory because they were like, "You're too experienced and expensive to be an assistant buyer."
Yeah.
And we don't have any space for like the higher up buyers, and we want you to have buying experience, but you can't be an assistant buyer. Because I'm like, thank you guys. Yeah. So I was like, fine, I'm going to find someone else that will let me. And then I moved to Ralph Lauren. So I was on their team there for about 2 years.
So just like Rachel from Friends?
Literally. And this is a very true story. About a week into working there, and I was on the team, so I was on Black Label and Collection, which is like the runway team. Like I was on, it was a good place to be within like the Ralph sphere.
Yeah.
But it's not like I saw him on a daily basis. And most people at Ralph Lauren never see him because there's multiple buildings and like the whole thing. But he was on our team, and I saw him in the elevator, and I was like, hi, Ralph, I'm one of your newest employees. I'm like really excited to be here. And he like shook my hand, and I was like, I am Rachel Green. This is the best day of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically the real thing. Also, his real last name,
Lipschitz,
as was my maiden name. So
No
I
way.
grew up thinking
Maybe you guys are related.
maybe we are. To this day, nobody will answer it for me. So it's probably why I'm so like classic Americana. And
I think so. Yeah.
I
I think that's what it is.
Maybe that's why I was really drawn to that fashion internship. Yeah. If you're out there, Ralph, and you're listening, just let's do 23andMe and figure it out. Or
like have him on the
not been
pod.
gripped. Yeah, just come on over. I'm sure you have kids. I don't know that much about your life now. Okay, so you have these experiences. You're moving through the ranks. You're figuring out what your skills are, what speaks to you. Where in this equation does your partner enter the picture?
So
because we're scared of boys. Like we
are scared of boys. Got over that, luckily, before I met him. But I met him like a year after I graduated. So it was a good friend of mine, had a new boyfriend, and doing the classic like slide the other friends in to like, hi, they're just here. And so we could like suss him out. And I guess he picked up on that because he brought Alex, who is his roommate and best friend. So we met that night. I remember we were waxing on and on. He was talking about the Yankees, and everyone was like, I'm like, are you going to kiss me or just like keep talking about the Yankees? Like, I like the Yankees too,
she's
but
not
like,
scared of boys anymore.
Well, I also thought I was getting fired the next day. So this was at that startup there were signs, weird stuff was going on. One of the designers pulled me aside and was like, I think we're all getting fired tomorrow. I think the company's going under.
Awesome.
So I went into this happy hour. Everyone else is acting normal. And I was like, dirty martini, extra dirty. Yeah. Extra alcohol.
You're just like a nihilist on the prowl.
And he was like, oh, look at her. And he did not know that's not my real personality, but it is when you think you're getting fired. So that helped kind of slide me in a little.
You trapped him. So you're having this chat. You go in for the kill. You're like, dude, are we doing this or not?
Yeah.
So you, at this point, this is around the time you lost your dad.
Yeah, it was less than a year after, oddly. Yeah.
So interestingly, this happens a lot with some of our podcasts who have lost their parents young, that their partner enters the picture like within a year of that loss.
No way. That is crazy.
It's very strange. And the researcher in me is collecting data on all different random points for one day if we ever write the Mother Life book. But there is an interesting thing there that like a lot of times people find their person around that time. I don't know what it is.
That is fascinating.
But what was it like for you to connect with somebody when your like big male figure bestie is no longer around?
Yeah, I mean, just sad. And it's more like I'm obviously mostly sad for me, obviously, as the one who knows, but like for my kids and for my husband, like it would have been nice if they had some overlap, you know? And I think he has said that makes him really sad, that he just, because he's like, I feel like I know him, because obviously at that point it was brand new, but also I still talk about him all the time. That's important to me that my kids, like, you know, they'll be like, oh, Papa loves that. Like we gave him a grandparent name, and they very much like, no, Papa's in heaven, you know, but that part sucks. It sucks that he doesn't have any sort of real context about who he was.
And when you were getting more serious with him, your husband's name's Alex?
Mm-hmm.
What were there, like, in your mind, were there checklists that you were like, these are things that I want in a relationship because I know, or were you just like young and stupid like the rest of us?
Yeah, more
like,
that.
You're cute. Let's have a dirty martini and hope I don't get fired tomorrow. Or like kind of just
correct. That was
living
my
life.
I mean, I'm sure if there had been some really big red flag, I mean, I think at a very high level, I was not, it's funny thinking about, like I follow Tinks and like we met at Acme and stuff. And it's funny seeing how like intentional and thoughtful women are now about like finding I'm sure men too, but like finding their partner and like waiting for the right. I didn't have some sort of checklist or like
me neither.
Whatever. It was more, like I said, there'd been a red flag. Like, oh, he's like really mean to his parents, or like, I don't know. But maybe that was subconsciously one, like I really liked his family. They were very warm and welcoming. And there was nothing like bad. So we
So why not?
got married together. So
we
that's a great
decided to
strategy.
Yeah, it worked out. Okay, so what at this time was he doing professionally?
So that's the other fun thing. 2008. So he's 2 years older than me.
Okay.
He had been working at JP Morgan. His entire trading desk got laid off. He that day booked this was 6 months before we met, 4 months before, something like that. He booked a one-way ticket to El Salvador. He's a surfer. He likes to surf.
Okay.
And just went by himself and surfed in El Salvador for like 2 months. Like he had decent savings. That's the time period where if you do go out of college in finance, you're making decent money and you have no like dependents or mortgage, So he was like, just let his lease lapse and went. And that's like, he had come back a few days before I met him. So that was the other weird thing is like everyone else, guys, everyone else has the vest and whatever. And he had like this hideous, like, it's shocking. I even like made out with him. He had like a hideous Billabong, like sweatshirt thing.
Are you talking about the
like,
thing that's sort of like woven?
Oh God, no, that I think would have been a hard pass. I know
Okay.
exactly the hacky sack. Like, no, that is one step too far for me. As somebody who at that stage was wearing like Lily Pulitzer,
Sure.
or I was emerging out of that stage. No, like just like an ugly Billabong sweatshirt with like neon, whatever, and like a flat brim
The
hat.
look of disgust on your face right now, Alex. You are so lucky you got given this chance.
He has beautiful eyes. That was,
Okay.
Thank God. Otherwise, I don't know. But the flat brim, now the flat brim hats are like cool, but in 2008 they were not. And he was really tan too, which was weird because it was like April in New York.
Right.
It was like freezing.
But he had just been doing his Eat, Pray, Love.
Yes. So I always go back to that. I'm like, whenever you make your billions, you have to remember that I started dating you when you had no job. So like you were an unemployed man. It's like, Mom, I met this guy. He's unemployed. He wears flat brim hats.
Strong start.
Huge Yankees fan.
There's that.
He did eventually get a job, to be fair.
And is he still a finance guy?
He is. So now he actually so what happened, this is interesting. So 6 months after we met, he was like, and he hadn't been working. He ended up taking like a creative writing class at Columbia and just like, he was just doing
Continuing
his thing.
Eat, Pray, Love.
Continuing
Figuring it out.
his Eat, Pray, Love. And he was like, one of my good friends is starting this company in San Francisco. And it was like, I won't get in the weeds on it, but it was like a food delivery, like whatever type of thing. And he was like, I'm going to go and be his kind of right-hand man and run like the back end and the finance for it. And I was like, okay, bye. And he was like, oh no, I thought we were going to keep dating. And I was like, oh, all right, let's do that. So we were long distance for 2 years. And then like right after he went there, Luca did start going under and like everyone got laid off. And I was like, okay, we're just like rotating who's unemployed.
Sure.
But then
it's good to not be at the same time.
I think so. Yeah.
And okay, so everybody's on their own journey. At what point do you talk about, like, as you're moving along in this relationship, wanting to have kids one day? Was that something that you both knew that you always wanted to be part of your picture?
Yes. And I'm sure, I don't remember like one conversation about it, but that's the type of thing that to me would have been like, we're not a good fit, if he had been like,
definitely
clearly hesitant about having kids or not wanting them. But I think pretty early on, we both talked about that. And he has 2 sisters he's pretty close with. And I think we both were like, we want kids. Yeah.
Okay. And when you did eventually have kids, how old were you guys when you started having kids?
So I got pregnant when I was 30 with Teddy, my oldest. So he was 32, which is like a child bride in New York. Like people were like alarmed when I was engaged at 20. We got married when I was 29. Yeah, when I was 20. They were like, really?
You are a child. Yeah, there's a 2 in it. It's shocking.
Yeah.
And did you have any expectations about like what it was going to be like to parent together? Or I mean, I didn't, obviously, in my own relationship. Like, but to your point about not being very intentional about like thinking about choosing a partner.
Yeah.
Similarly, I wasn't like, this is the kind of parents we're going to be, and da 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 da. This is how we're going to divide labor. This is what this is going to look like.
We didn't really have that. I'm like realizing these are all things I should have done. No, we didn't have that conversation, but I think we both felt like he knew how confident I was, like that I'd been a nanny before and like for babies, and like was really excited to be a mom. And I very much went into it like kind of planning to be all in on that. And I think he was comfortable letting me take the lead and like jumping in where he was needed. And that is like how it panned out, but we didn't have like an explicit conversation about it.
Now, did you want to be a stay-at-home parent, or did you want to work? And
that was the weird thing, is I think my whole childhood, I assumed I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And that's still something that I sometimes, you sort of wrestle with, like the perception of who you would be and who you actually are. And sometimes that still is like a little hard for me. I'm like, I had in this mind that I was just going to be like
So
the room, so enclosed room mom, whatever. And don't get me wrong, there are certain things that are very like stay-at-home mommy about me for sure. But the truth is, where I thrive is having like a very strong career and then having set aside time for my family and doing both, especially outside of the baby stage. I'm extremely protective of that. So like for the first year of all my kids' life, regardless of if I was working or not, I was the only one with them. Like certainly no baby nurse, which is like what all my clients use. No like nanny, no babysitter. It's me. And beyond that, then I start to loosen up a little bit.
You delegate.
I delegate.
To the neighborhood.
to my 12-year-old
neighborhood child. So when that first child, Teddy's the first one. When Teddy enters the picture, how was that experience for you? Was it like mind bending? You're like, I know what this is. I feel comfortable. Were there things that you were just like, I'm surprising myself by how I am feeling about certain things?
Not as much that piece, but you know, people love to scare you when you're pregnant, which is like one of my biggest pet peeves. Like we talked about this, the like, just wait.
Yes.
You know, be like,
fucking hate
no.
Just wait.
You're gonna, even now, like one of my friends was confiding me that someone else, like a mutual acquaintance, was like, little people, little problems, because she was dealing with something with her kindergartner.
Right.
I was like, that's so shitty to say to somebody. Like, because just because you have a sixth grader who has different issues, like it kind of goes back to the whole thing. Like if you don't like meet your kids where they are when the things are small, they're not going to come to you when they're big. Same with a friend, right? Like you're like dismissive of that was huge to them because they're 4. So, you know, but same thing as that. If you're dismissive to your friend when they're, you know, then they're not going to want to come to you when they have bigger things.
I really, really like that. I lost it on a woman in Trader Joe's, a total stranger.
Awesome.
Which doesn't happen to me very often. I'm very much like, I want people to like me and feel comfortable.
Same.
But my son was having a really hard time. This was a while ago now, like a year at least. A really hard time. And he was in the store with me and it was just very challenging. I'm visibly like stressed trying to manage him in this store. And this woman was like, basically like, just wait. And she said, cherish this time. And I look at her and I go, are you kidding? Are you choosing right now to give me this feedback that I didn't ask for? And she just doubled down and she's like, because when they get older. And I was like, you've chosen the wrong audience, ma'am. I don't know what you think you're trying to do right now, but it's really not helping.
No. She woke up and chose violence and she needs to.
And it's like, I know that I think it comes from 2 places when people do that. One, they just want to talk to a stranger, which I get. I love talking to strangers.
Same.
Or 2, like they're having a feeling and they think that their feeling is the thing that everybody should be feeling. Like
Correct.
They're thinking about their own child and how,
Correct.
And whatever it is, that doesn't come from a bad place, but it also comes from like kindly shut the fuck up place.
100%. Yeah, I think it's sort of in a weird way an unintentionally selfish thing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you were exhausted when you had your baby, so you're going to project that onto other people and like make sure everyone knows that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And the truth is, it's kind of like when you have your second born and you're like, will the older one love them, hate them, be completely indifferent? You don't know until they're born.
Yeah.
So none of the things people scared me about happened. But what did happen was I had him a month early and they were like, I had cholestasis.
Yeah.
On Mother's
Wait, what
Day,
is
found
that?
out.
What's cholestasis?
It's kind of rare, but it's basically like at the very end of your pregnancy, you start getting really like itchy, but isolated to the palm of your hands and the bottom of your feet. Oh. And because I'm neurotic and crazy, I obviously was like constantly Googling. I like hate being pregnant. I love my kids, but the pregnancy part as a control freak is hard. And it was like, could be nothing, could be this really rare thing that like can cause stillbirth past 37 weeks. And I was that day 36 weeks. And I was like, okay, so Mother's Day brunch is, the brunch we were having is canceled. Called the hospital. They were like, probably come right now. Got there and they were like, you have it and we're going to induce you now. And I was like, cool. But they were like, don't worry, you're like measuring he's going to be big. You're not going to the NICU. It's fine. And he came out and like, I think I held him for 2 seconds and they were like, something's off with his breathing. He was big. He was 6 pounds, 9 ounces. They called him the giant of the NICU.
Yeah, I was about to say. For sure.
He was. And the little girl next to him, I will never forget her, was probably the size of his toe. But so they like whisk him away. They made some error very early on. Like the first time I went up to see him, they thought his lung had collapsed. They were bringing in a cardiologist. There's something wrong with like his heart. So that was horrific.
Traumatic.
Got some medical gaslighting when I was like trying to get answers about what was going on and asked to speak to the doctor one night. And they sent me like a therapist person, and I started screaming at her.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not crazy. Like, you're not, like, no one will tell me what's going on, and I'm trying to figure that, whatever. So that was really bad. Like, that's probably when I feel like I was the most mentally unstable in my life, was that 2 weeks when he was in the NICU.
Feels like a reasonable time.
Yeah.
First child.
Yeah, first child. I was so excited to be a mom. But then on the flip of it, that day bringing him home, I still think was like the happiest moment of my life, like that.
Oh, she's getting emotional. But I mean, this is the thing. It's like with all milestones, I was just talking about this recently. When they're harder fought to get there, they mean so much more.
Like people who have infertility struggles, I can only imagine, like, if you're trying for 6 years to have a baby and you finally have them, it must be like the most euphoric moment of your life.
Yeah. Or my daughter didn't start walking till 18 months, which, is now, I guess, newish normal, but like is a long time. And the physical therapy, all of the stuff we had to do and she had to do to get there. It was just like when my son took his first steps, we were happy for him, but it wasn't euphoria. We weren't like, oh my God, like she is going to walk to college.
Teddy was the same.
Yeah.
He really didn't walk fully independently till he was almost 2. And it was so hard. You're like having play dates and he's just sitting there.
Yeah.
All the other kids are running.
It's horrible.
It's
horrible. But it does make the wins that much sweeter.
Totally.
So when does sleep as a passion of yours enter the picture?
So that like whole origin story was, I was at Birchbox. So I pivoted from Ralph Lauren to Birchbox, which was incredible. I had such a great experience working there. But at one point I was in a meeting with like other, like the executive team and like some of the VPs. I was a director. And I was sitting next to, I don't want to say his position because he lives in Venice. He's going to be like, stop talking shit about me.
I do remember seeing this story somewhere and I literally started laughing out loud.
That is what happened. Like he literally fell asleep in the middle of a meeting and I like kicked him because it was like an important meeting. And he was like, sorry, I was up all night with the baby. And I just remember thinking like, is that a thing? Because that's like, and at that point, I had really no friends with kids. I think I had one friend who was further along her pregnancy than me. That was kind of it. And I was like, that's not going to happen. So I read all the books and did all the things and kind of cobbled together what I thought would work. And I was very focused on it because at the time my assumption was I was going to go on maternity leave and go back to Birchbox. And so, and he was a good guinea pig for all of this because looking back, he was, some kids it's just easier than others. That's a reality. Every baby is capable of great sleep, but some take the hard road and he did not. But he was sleeping through the night at like 3 months. He was on great naps at that point. Like he was night weaned and he was just an excellent sleeper. But because I didn't have any other friends with kids, I kind of just thought, I did what you're supposed to do. I read all the things and I have a good sleeper. And people you're so lucky, and even then it still pisses me off. But then I was like, I'm not lucky. Like you guys were all just like pulling them into bed with you. And I was like, I'm looking at the things and I'm like trying to figure, and it was when I got to LA. So my husband got a job opportunity out here. We moved when Teddy was like 8 months old or something like that. And then I had my second and I'm in a mommy and me class. And of course, he's a great sleeper too, right? So he was a newborn and he's already like going long stretches. He's doing great. And he was a 34 weeker so he was tiny. And I'm thinking, okay, if I can get...
Wait, are you breastfeeding these kids?
I'm exclusively breastfeeding them. I mean, I always offer bottles early. So I was giving them a bottle like once a day or somebody was giving them. But otherwise exclusively nursing. And that was when I realized this isn't like luck. Like this is something I'm good at. And at that time when we moved to LA, I had decided to pause working. It just seemed too crazy. I actually flew to LA when he was 8 weeks old, when Teddy was 8 weeks old for an interview for like a final rounds. And I got back on the plane and I was like, this is crazy. There's no way I can move across the country and start and it was going to be like a VP at like a competitor where I'm like, this is crazy and have no friends, like no house, no nanny. So I was like, I'm going to pause. So I wasn't working. But realizing I wanted to, and I kind of thought I'd be a stay-at-home mom, and I was like, I'm not sure this is what I'm cut out for. And so I just Googled, like, can you help people with sleep as a job? It turns out you can get certified. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to do this. And I just bought the program that day and was like, this is what I'm going to do.
So it's really interesting because your journey with sleep started because you had good sleepers. So I also have been extremely lucky with my kids in terms of their sleep.
No, you haven't. You did something well.
No. Yes. No, you're right. I did, but I read all the books. I did all the things. But the difference between you and I is while I babysat as a kid, I didn't have like loads of baby experience. So when my baby, the first one, I guess, came home from the hospital, I didn't know how to hold a newborn.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to soothe a newborn. There's so much about, and I've talked about this on the pod before, mother's intuition that I think is a lie. Mother's intuition
100% a lie.
is like a collection of data and experience that you're then applying to a new problem.
Such a good way to put it.
Right? So like for me, not knowing how to soothe my child, and it was during the pandemic, my first one, there was no like grandma in the village showing me how to hold a baby or how to soothe or whatever. And so I'm on the YouTube videos. I fall prey to, you know, the taking care of babies of the world. And not that like, no shade, whatever. Everybody needs different things. But for me, a lot of those things made me feel like if I just make the room darker, it's me because I can't make the room darker. Or if I just do this and I just do that. And it ended up the type of help that was available to me at the time just kept making me feel like I had no problem letting my children cry it out if that's what needed to be done. Like it wasn't, but the rules felt so strict and restraining and confusing, and it was just like so much.
Especially at the newborn stage.
Especially the newborn stage. We're living at the time in an apartment in New York where like his room was this tiny little basically closet with a sliding door in the living room. So like anytime somebody's
watching, and this is in the pandemic too. So you're just locked up raw.
It's just a fucking nightmare basically. Yep. And we got there and he was a great sleeper from really early on. But the psychological welfare to myself of going through it was rough. Yes. And the fighting with my husband about like, this is the way we're going to do it. Yes. And so when I think about your job, and we can talk about it more, and I wrote something about this. I'll have to revisit it with a Brittany lens on because I wrote it more with the taking care of babies lens on. But basically, I think so much of what your job must be is being a therapist to people, to the adults.
100%.
I think there's this misconception that there's something that's going to be happening to the babies, but really what you're doing is coaching parents and giving them the tools on how to like navigate their own emotions about a lot of this stuff.
Oh yeah. I had a lot of calls yesterday. And one of the moms on the call and they were just having a tough time with some things. And the dad was like, this is like where I shine sometimes, I hope, for people. The dad was like, are we overreacting? Like, you're not overreacting. This is your first baby. And like, that's not how adults sleep. And I get why this looks crazy. And I'm like, walking them through like how newborns sleep and all this stuff. And the mom at the end was like, I do not envy your job. Like talking to people like us all day. That must be like exhausting, whatever, but like, that's why, again, you have the jobs that are meant for your temperament and your skill set and all of that. And I do think I actually said to her, I was like, it's probably like a therapist. A lot of people would be terrible therapists because it's hard to like take on other people's emotions and like hold them and be able to release them properly and like live your own life.
That's what I was thinking about with your mom, actually, with the job that she's doing now. Yeah. Like, not taking that home with you.
Totally. Yeah. You have to. And hers is like next level because that's like a doctor like having to, give somebody terrible news. That's got to be a whole other thing. But yeah, so yeah, that's my job.
And what I think is super interesting about how you navigate your job is you did a huge pivot in your career based on learning something new about yourself and parenthood, which I always love to see. Yeah. And also you took all of these skills from your previous life. Like you have a CRM system, like a client relationship management system. Like you've got automated emails, you've got databases, you've got automated emails coming to people when they start. You've got a whole approach that is really deeply rooted in business that you don't necessarily associate with this sort of like more touchy-feely sleep world.
Yes, absolutely. And I actually said to my husband once, because he has his own hedge fund that we launched them both in March of 2020, both of our businesses, when we had a 2-year-old and a newborn. Sure. So super chill.
Normal thing to do.
I remember he would take 1 hour off. I got 1 hour. So the kids obviously were great nappers. Teddy took a 3-hour nap every afternoon. That's when I would work. And he would give me from 11 to 12, and he would take them both in the stroller. And that's the other hour that I got every day to work. So I said to him, though, that was like a weird segue into this. I said to him once that like the reason we're successful, and I think what people need when you have your own business, is you have to genuinely be good at the thing, right? Like I can like say I want to be a designer, but if I'm not actually good at designing clothes, it doesn't matter if you have the other two pieces, right? You have to be really good at the thing you're doing, and you have to be a really, really hard worker.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, what's the third? Now I forgot it. It was so profound. This is so upsetting. You have to be good at it. You have to be a hard worker. And you have to love it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because you get like Center Stage, you know that movie? Where like the one girl has like the perfect feet,
Yes,
but
of
she's
course.
just not what she loves.
Yeah.
So you have to like genuinely like the top, like the thing.
Love
like
that Center
I enjoy
Stage
talking
has
about
made an entrance into the pod.
I feel like it's a good analogy, but like you have to genuinely enjoy the thing and be really good at it and be able to work harder than everyone else.
That seems like a good sort of 3 pillars to have.
Yes.
Now, you guys are both starting businesses at the same time. What are we fighting about during this period? You got young kids, and while everybody's sleeping, you still have young children at home that are demanding when they're awake.
Yeah, totally.
Like, what are the big fights?
Oh, we definitely had big fights. And I'm trying to
Or
think.
what are you fighting about now? I just like to hear what people are fighting about, basically.
What are we fighting about now? Well, one thing that I really get on him about that leads to fights is that he has a potty mouth, which was like, I didn't care about it when we were dating or married or we had a baby. But now I get he's like passionate about his football team and stuff. You have to stop dropping F-bombs because now my 7-year-old will say that. Like he'll like be playing baseball outside and like miss the ball and drop an F-bomb. And I'm like, Alex, this is your fault.
But don't you think there's a world where he could? I mean, if he's just at home with you guys, I guess if he's like out on a field.
I know. See, right. And I have to like reconcile those things, right? Like, yeah, exactly.
Just because I love swearing so much. So I'm,
It is such a classic example of things, though, that you've just like been fed your whole life, that some of them I'm consciously like, this is bad. And this one, very good point. And I actually have a friend, like you have friends that you really look up to in certain aspects of their life.
Yeah.
And I remember giving this speech. She had a baby sprinkle for her third, like 2 years ago. And that was the speech I gave, is like, Claire does such a good job of like, we'll be like at a dinner party at her house and she'll be like, Cal, do you want to put some clothes on? And like, she's very, like, because her child's just running around naked.
Sure.
But if I know myself, and if that was me, I would be embarrassed. Right. I would be in there like, Jenny, you can't just get naked when we have people over. Like, I have to escape that piece of me that thinks that's just like inappropriate.
Yeah.
Because she's really good at the things that actually do matter.
Right.
But when it's something like that, she's like, well, I hope you put some clothes on. And I got to lean into that more. And I'm not great at it.
I can be, depending on the setting. So my husband and I were just talking about that the other day. We went to a play date for my son's new school that he's starting at next year. And he's meeting the principal for the first time. And he's a little socially anxious in general. Yeah. And he decides this is the time, he's never met this person before, to just start breakdancing. Never seen my child breakdance basically in his life. I think he learned it from Sing, the movie.
Oh, great movie.
And we both were just like, we had a choice, right? In this moment, we're meeting the principal, and we both just go, get after it, dude. Like, get deep, like, go for it. And similarly, like, there have been some other moments recently where he's done stuff that's like very unexpected in a social situation, and it's totally fine. But if we were with other people, namely family members who have maybe more traditional expectations of how children should behave, I will find myself feeling the shame and the embarrassment and the stress of it. Because it's not because I give a shit, but I don't want them to give a shit and make my kid feel shitty.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean.
So I think the audience matters.
The audience totally matters. And I have another friend whose parenting I also respect. And she said when they were at the time too, our 2 daughters were having just like a full-blown exorcism about like, a doll they were fighting over or something. Sure. And they're both just standing there like mouths agape, just, And we were just watching them. And she was like, so much of parenting is just tolerating their behavior and their emotions. Like there wasn't really anything for us to do. I hate listening to screaming, but it was just like, they're going to work it out.
Yeah. And if you say cut that shit out, it's not like they're going to cut that shit out.
If anything, it'll probably make it worse.
Yeah. It's like telling me to calm down when I'm decidedly not calm.
Oh my God. Right. That's one thing I really try not to do because it's so patronizing. It's like, if you're like not doing great and somebody's like, just relax. It's like, oh, thank you.
I'll show you what relaxed looks like.
It's super helpful. Thanks.
Break relaxed over your face.
Yeah.
Okay. So F-bombs at home maybe can potentially ignite some disagreements with you and your husband.
Yes.
As far as division of labor goes, what does it look like? And does everyone know their job?
Definitely room for improvement there. There's some things we have very well ironed out. I'm a big fan so that we don't get into arguments about it, of trying to have structure around certain things that are like a repetitive always whatever. So in the morning, I always take our oldest to school, which is walking. My husband always picks him up because he works from home and because of his job works New York hours. So I'm working more traditional hours. I'm in the office like 8:30 to 5, but he's like up at 5, sometimes earlier, and then market closes at 1, right? So he picks Teddy up, and then for our little kid's school that is 3 days a week. I do one morning, he does one morning, our nanny does one morning and all afternoons. So that's very clear. And then he's more the chef. Like if someone's going to cook dinner, it's more likely him. I'm like 90% of the shopping for the food. So like there are certain things that I'm the only one who does laundry. I'm definitely like the classic, I have the mental load for sure. Like he's never like trimmed someone's toenails. He's never done earwax. He's never been to a pediatrician appointment, things like that. So, but at the same time, I am conscious of, while I have like a very much thriving, great business, like if one of us was going to quote unquote get fired by ourselves, theoretically, his would be more detrimental than me.
Yes.
And I am aware of that. So it also, the nature of my job, like his is operated by the market. So like he kind of can't ever take time off. It sucks when I do because I have a backlog after that. But theoretically, by the nature of what I do, I can block off the calendar. So for things like volunteering at my son's school, like I'm the one who's going to do those things. I'm filling out all those forms.
All the fucking
forms. All the fucking forms,
But you're happy to do it, it sounds like.
For the most part, yeah. I would like him to appreciate it more, but I actually don't mind that stuff. Like I'm never like folding laundry angrily. If anything, I find it kind of soothing. Like,
okay, you can fold my laundry. Just kidding. We have an amazing housekeeper who folds the laundry in this house. I'm not even going to pretend I do it.
No, everyone outsources it. Like everyone who can afford it. I think I'm the only person who's like, no, give it to me.
You find it meditative.
I do. So I have this thing on Mondays I call Mom CEO, and I'm extremely protective of it. Like no matter how heavy my workload is, I will work until midnight every other day of the week. Mom CEO. I speak to the clients who are in plan, 0 calls, even things like this, and I'm at home. And it's when I like bring our life back together because the weekends are so hectic with 3 kids. Now we have sports and social things, and then I'm gone all day and I get home. I don't want to open Amazon boxes at 7:30 when I'm like already putting kids to bed. It's too much.
Yeah.
So Monday I stay home and I do all of the laundry, open all the boxes, and I try to give myself one project that's like the pantry is a disaster, or like Teddy's closet is a disaster. I do the secret thing where I walk around the garbage bag and take all the kids like shit that's they're hoarding that they're not going to miss, that is just cluttering the house.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Like the memes where it's like me helping my husband find something that I definitely threw away in rage cleaning 2 weeks ago.
So I do that every week. Yeah, exactly. And so like in between doing that, I'm like talking to clients via email, but otherwise I'm like very like, let's get our life together. Because I found that I was trying to do it piecemeal throughout the week, and it made my life really hard. Even though it makes the days I'm on the phone like exhausting, it for my like mental space, it's so much better to know going into each day like what's happening and not have it be like I have a call every hour and a half, 5 days a week, all day.
Yeah. And what does it do to your brain when you get derailed because a kid's sick and has to...
Honestly, this is going to sound so bad, but my kids, I really shouldn't say this. They don't get really sick that much. And it's
or if there's like some random school holiday.
Yeah, well, we have a nanny. We have a full-time nanny. Okay. So that's what I'm saying is I haven't had a situation yet. I'm sure it will happen. I haven't had my kids get the type of illness where I felt uncomfortable with her being there.
Yes.
And she's like, whatever. Okay. So if one of them has like a head cold and has to stay home from school, she's like, okay.
Okay.
And she's just with them.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions for you from people.
Oh, wow. How exciting.
Just a couple. Nothing crazy. Let me make sure no new ones have been submitted since I asked. Okay. Okay. So one is not actually a kid sleep question. It's an adult sleep question that maybe you have.
I will try my best. Yeah, why not?
One is, why do I always need noise of the TV to sleep? White noise doesn't do anything for me. It's a pretty specific question.
That is specific, but my like immediate guess, because I remember getting to college and a girl who was my roommate, and I had to gently be like, could we not? She had like fallen asleep to Friends her whole life. And I actually did read something recently that like rewatching your favorite show or movie is like this like mentally soothing exercise. It like brings it's like good for you. So my thought would be either does this person have like negative, assuming it's like certain shows, like maybe like negative memories around sleep or night from before I'm like being all therapist-y. And so that helps them calm down? Or is it that either your parents used to fall and it's like a happy thing, like the sound of it? Like I love college football, but also reminds me of like growing up, my dad loved football too. And like, I love the sound of like a football game in the background. So I wonder if it's that, or she used to fall asleep to TV when she was a kid and a teenager. So that's just like what she's like needing.
Okay, well,
that'd be my guess.
You know who you are who asked that question, so have a think. Next question. When to transition to a big kid bed from the crib when it's an upstairs kid, downstairs parents situation?
Team crib till college.
Amen.
So I used to say 3.5. And I don't care that people think I'm crazy. My clients don't. Now I say 4. The difference in the experience of moving a 2 or a 3-year-old to a bed versus a 4-year-old is night and day.
Yeah.
Like one is like all hell has broken loose. That's what keeps my toddler business going. And the other one is like, they're old enough to understand the boundaries. You can say like, you're a big boy. I trust you to stay in your room. It's not safe to leave. And most 4-year-olds can like wrap their heads around that.
We did my son at 4 and he...
Amazing.
Well, we did like a toddler bed transition with the 3-side thing first with a bumper. So it still felt like he had to climb over something.
Yeah.
He was a total classic first kid. But I couldn't imagine of doing it sooner for him in particular. Okay. So you're like, doesn't matter upstairs, downstairs, just keep them in that crib as long as...
I mean, especially if the parents are downstairs, because then it is, if they needed you or like you were giving them free reign of the house, now it's even scarier because they're going up and downstairs.
And what do you say to people whose kids are like climbing out of the crib?
Secure the door,
okay.
Which people love to freak out about that. And I always, with everything in my business, I'm like, we have to go back to a place of logic.
Yeah.
Then you're basically saying when they were it's okay to keep them in a cage, but a day later, it's not okay to keep them in the room. Like that doesn't logically make sense.
Okay. Just a quick note here to say that I circled back with Brittany on this to get clarity about the whole climbing out of the crib thing. If your child is repeatedly climbing out of the crib, it's time to move them to a bed. She gave me a bit more of a nuanced answer depending on the age and circumstances around the climbing out, so you can DM her for the nuance if you need it. All right, so let me go here. Next one. This is somebody I think that knows you.
Oh my God, I'm so nervous.
You are so true to yourself. You work your ass off. You're a fantastic mom and you're fun. You're hot. Your friends, you hang out with your friends and you support them. You participate at your kids' school. You're doing it all, it seems like. How do you juggle it? And when do you feel like you're, having a hard time juggling it?
I mean, I'm always having a hard time juggling it. I think it would be completely disingenuous to say I'm not. And I think, I have help. I have a full-time nanny. And I have a husband who sometimes I'll talk to clients, like their husband travels 5 days a week. Like mine, Don't get me wrong. I'm doing, but he is physically there. So if there are situations like last night, I was so underwater with work. I usually come home at 5. He had tennis at 6:15. I'm like, can you please handle giving them dinner? I'll be home by 6 so you have time to get to tennis and we'll like swap out, right? And I ended up having to work until like 10:30 last night, which is kind of unusual, but that's not like ideal. Like you shouldn't be working from 9 a.m. to 10:30, right? So there are days like that. And there are times where I feel like I'm burnt out and I'm not as present with my kids because I'm just exhausted from talking to people all day. So, it's not a perfect science. And there are weeks where I'm with friends all the time and I'm hungover in the morning. It's not, that's the reality. But I also personally feel like for me, maybe this isn't everybody, I feel the best when I feel pretty well-rounded. Like if my entire life is focused on one thing, that's when I feel icky. Like if I'm always out, if I'm only home with my kids, if I'm working way too much.
You have your parents to thank for that because they wanted you to be well-rounded. They didn't want you to go all in on gymnastics.
No, and I actually overheard them talking about me in high school because I was like a happy B+ student.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's fine. Like I'll get into college. I'm not like, I wasn't worried about it. And I heard them and my dad was like, I really wanted her to be just like well-rounded and content with lots of things. I kind of waited. I wish she waited a few more years to be like that. But, I knew it'd all work out. It did.
Interesting. It did. So we feel best when we are well-rounded, but you're saying for everybody listening that you cannot be well-rounded all the time.
No. And I also think that it's really important to understand your own, like my mom still talks all the time about how my like social battery and my energy battery is so much higher than hers. So I think acknowledging that I'm an extrovert.
Yes.
And so to me, like today I'm doing this, I have 5 calls after this and we're going out to dinner with friends after. And that's a long day, but to me that's like
fun. I'm
prepared for it, but it's fun. And I wouldn't like cancel the dinner, where I think some people would get to 3 o'clock and be like, I'm going to like jump off a bridge.
My husband.
So Right. So like that's a reality. And those people are doing things that maybe aren't so public. It doesn't mean they're sitting around doing nothing.
He's a writer.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like he's still living his life. The things I do to live just make me seem like I'm a crazy person. But
I get that.
I like it.
I get that. Okay, I think we covered everything. Now, the last thing that's obviously important for people to understand is a couple of things that I want to put out there. One, you're not just dealing with baby sleep. You're dealing with sleep of all kids, age kids, especially up to like the age of 7-ish.
Yes.
And so if you are having a sticky or tricky problem, people can check out your website. I know that you both have like courses that people can sign up for, but people can also directly consult with you.
Correct.
There's all sorts of options for all sorts of different problems and financial availabilities. And also, if you just want to have a laugh, I recommend your Instagram. So I'm going to put everything in the show notes so people can check it out. But this has been so much fun.
This was so fun. Thanks for having me.
That just flew by.
Same. I was like, oh, we're already done? Great.
I'm a little sad, honestly.
Same.
Team, I need your help. If you love it here, please like and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe to the Substack for full access to this episode's show notes and join the discussion. And of course, follow me on Instagram at Mutha, MUTHA.life for a daily look at all things Mutha. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in next week for another Chat in the Closet. This podcast was produced by Mutha Life, music by Ronan Landa. See you next time.